Okay, so let's play a game that I often play when people ask us for relationship advice, especially marriage advice, of whether or not they should or should not get married, or if they're too, should we go down this pathway? One of the things that I always bring to people, and I know it's an analogy that you love, is if I gave you $30,000 and told you go to Vegas, you're going to have one bet, one game, one chance to place all that money. But that one bet you make, there is a 50 to 70% chance you're going to lose the money. Would you do it?
Definitely not. And why don't you share, where do you get that statistic of 50 to 70% chance
So,
of losing that money?
First divorce rates, all the divorce lawyers talk about it, the statistics talked about it. As we discussed in our previous episode, if you haven't watched it, go back and watch it. Yes, the number is dropping, and we've discussed why that number is dropping, and we'll discuss it further into other videos. But the reality of it is that first divorce rate is about 50%, second marriage is about 70%, and the third marriage is almost 100%. What I'm seeing is that a lot of my friends who are getting married for a second time are still going down the pathway and doing the big $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 weddings. So knowing what the statistics are, would you do it?
I definitely wouldn't. And we would love to hear from our followers and our listeners. Would you do it?
Absolutely.
So let's get into this as to why relationships are failing, what's working, what's not working, and why are people jumping into something knowing the statistics, knowing that there is a huge chance of it not working out and them losing all the time, money, and even their soul in getting a divorce.
What's crazy is that we're seeing younger people who are going down this pathway, who they believe they've got it all figured out. I don't need to read a book. I don't need to talk to somebody who's been married. I don't need to question it. Oh no, I don't need any kind of relationship advice. I've got it all figured out. I know it all.
And that's one of the biggest problems because they don't want to learn. I know I have tried to reach out and teach and even attract the younger generations with my ebooks, with my courses, with our classes, look at our tantra couples retreats that we do. The average age in those retreats,
they're all over 40.
All over 40 years old because
young people don't figure it all out.
Until shit hits the fan.
But you know what's sad is that, and when you start at the younger age and having these deep relationships, because you weren't taught in the first place, because you didn't have the tools, because you never really sat down and admitted that, you know what, I don't have all the answers. What happens is they go into one relationship, it ends badly. They take all the baggage of that first relationship, strap it on their back, and step into a second relationship.
Yep.
And then a third, and then a fourth, and then a fifth. And what they keep doing is shoving more and more stuff into that backpack to the point where they can't even be in relationships anymore.
Unfortunately not. And that's one of the problems if we look at where does all that shit come from? It really comes from the time before we were 7 years old. All of our belief systems and programming and this societal pressure that we need to be in a relationship, we need to get married, we need to have that $100,000 wedding, we need to have the kids, the house, we gotta have all of that. All of that is programming. Absolutely. Which then forces us to jump into a relationship way too soon without even interviewing the person. As you always say, we spend how much time interviewing potential presidents and politicians?
Politicians are normally vetted for at least a year or two before, and that's a 4-year position. And yet we jump into lifetime commitments.
Lifetime. Years.
With no interview process. It's either we go out, I like you, you like me. Before we know it, we're getting married.
Yeah, there's the 3-step rule. First date, second date, you're having sex maybe, third date, you're already in a relationship. And there's no time to really step back and go, wait a second, this person isn't good for me, or this isn't really who I want, but because you're of a certain age and that biological clock is ticking.
Or your friends are putting the pressure on you. Or what makes it worse today? Social media.
Social media.
Social media tells you, oh, you need to have this wedding, you need to have this extravagance, look at all these bridal monsters on reality TV that we're like, oh yeah, we need all of that. That's why I'm telling my nephews, if you want to get married, if that's what you really want to do, ask yourself first, hey, is this truly a partner that I want to be in a business relationship? Because marriage is,
It's a business.
it's the business of marriage.
Absolutely. And people are not treating it that way, which is why they're jumping into it way too soon, spending way too much money to have these glamorous weddings. And I can admit,
For one day.
out of all of my friends that I was a bridesmaid for in their wedding, guess what? They're all divorced and most of them are unhappy.
Yeah.
And it was like, what was all of that money for then? Just to throw it away? Just to be princess for a day and then a couple years later, because it literally was a couple years later for the majority of them, it didn't even last 10 years, just to throw it away, just like that.
So, you brought up an interesting point. Being the female, tell me about this princess for a day syndrome.
I don't know, because I didn't need to be a princess for a day. I got married for what, $65?
Which we'll talk about.
We basically eloped, which we're going to share our story with you as we promised you in the last episode a little bit later on. But there is this concept around being princess for a day, because when I look at all of my friends' weddings and even all the women that I coach before they get married, it's really about what they want. It's about the kind of flowers, the colors, the music, the venue, how many people can come, the who's gonna sit where. And when I look and I question them, I always ask them, well, where is the man in all of this? Where is his preference, his point of view, his desires? And oftentimes a lot of the men we talk to too, they really don't care.
Listen, I've been a groomsman for probably a half a dozen weddings.
They're usually...
And I will tell you that the guys have almost no say.
They're going along for the ride.
They're told what color suits they have to have. They're told when to show up. They're told how many people. They're told what they're going to eat. They're just being told. I mean, we even subscribe to the BS that, oh, your engagement ring should be X times your salary. Who the hell comes up with that? Says who? What did our cost us? A whole $500, if that, together?
If that. Together, I think it was 500 and something, yeah.
What did your engagement ring? Oh, wait, you didn't get one. So, you know what? It's crazy what we subscribe to. And like I said, technology and social media, we had already been pressured by this, by society, by friends, by family. Now we're getting the additional pressure of social media programming.
Yeah, I have to post a picture. I have to look happy. I have to be part of the societal norm. I have to stay up with the status quo.
But you know what's crazy is that even subscribing to that princess for a day, you talk to most women as we have, they are so freaking stressed out that day that they don't even remember the wedding. Some chaos happened, some things got run short. So it's always chaotic.
Yeah.
Where, you know, ours was like
easy peasy, amazing, incredible. It still tops every wedding story we've ever heard.
Absolutely. But after the princess for a day fails, and this is like we had discussed in the other episode, it's the male and female version. Men don't want that big extravagant wedding. That's not. You ask most men, that's not what they want. Exactly. Do you know how many parents that I know who are friends who are children and now starting to get married? I had a conversation where the guy told me, he says, I would love for my daughter, I've even offered to just says, here's $30,000, put it down on the house. Nope, I need to have the wedding. I need to invite all my friends. I need to have the professional photographer. I need to buy the $3,000 wedding dress. I need it for that day.
And we always go back to that question, why and for what? What does it do for you if your relationship is going to end in a divorce?
So you go from being soulmates to solo mates.
Basically, that's a better version than roommates.
Absolutely.
Literally solo mates. Because once you get married, and as we mentioned in the last episode as well, oftentimes people change once they get married because they're no longer chasing their partner. They're no longer putting in that same effort to win them over. So then the complacency sets in, the sex starts dying off. Next thing you know, they're having babies. So then the women are devoting all their time to the children. The husbands are spending more time at work.
Absolutely.
Next thing you know...
Or golfing, or poker game, anything to not to be in the house.
Exactly.
That's just the reality.
Quite a few male clients who admit that. Next thing you know, the couple has grown apart. Give it 18 years, all the kids are now leaving the house, and you have empty nesters, and they're looking at one another going, who are you?
Absolutely.
I don't know you anymore.
But what happens? What is the transition from that? We all claim that we want to marry our soulmates.
We're all looking for the one, the twin flame.
How does that transition to where do we become roommates? What happens?
Exactly.
What portion of this that weren't we paying attention to when we slipped into this roommate syndrome? We slipped into the fact that You've held out sex for so long that as a man, I don't really care anymore. So by the time that you're ready for it, I've moved my mind onto different things or different people.
That's just it. You can't, there's not a turn on, turn off button. So when that flame, the passion has died out, when it's burned out and it takes a lot of work to reignite it, oftentimes it's not just a push of a button to reignite it. It's going to take a little bit of work. And that's where, unfortunately, I've personal stories from women I've worked with. They have tried to reignite it, and because they either rejected the man or they just didn't make time for him, they didn't make him a priority, sex was basically on the cookie system, as Steve Harvey puts it, the man no longer is turned on by them, and no matter what they do, they're struggling to get him back in to reignite the flame, because it takes two to tango.
Well, the reality of it, and this is something that we'll discuss in detail in another episode, but to give you a brief understanding of it, men are very finicky when it comes to sex. And that's just the reality of it. We have to be turned on by that person, and we have to be wanted and needed from that person. The minute we don't feel that, our mind drifts elsewhere. It's not that we stop thinking about sex, it's just we stop thinking about sex with you.
Exactly.
We start thinking about sex with everybody else. So, and because of technology, it's so easy to get it today.
Yeah.
That I don't even have to put in the effort.
No. And it makes the grass on the other side look a whole lot greener than what they have right here at home.
So when it gets turned off for male, and I can tell you, because I've gone through this, no matter what you do, if you have rejected me multiple times, if you have made me feel not wanted or needed, if every time I've asked for sex, or I shouldn't even have to ask, since it's a partnership, both people should be contributing, nobody should be waiting for the other one to initiate, whole different conversation. But if enough of those things is piled on, my interest in you is no longer there.
Absolutely.
Once it's gone,
it's gone.
It ain't coming back.
And you know what's interesting? I was working with a client about a month ago who she has tried everything to turn it back on with her partner.
Not gonna happen.
And when I finally got her to realize that she literally has rejected him so much, so I made her switch roles. And when she realized, wow, if he were to be the first one rejecting me, and now he all of a sudden comes at me trying to turn me back on, she realized, yeah, I don't have a turn on button either. So of course what I'm doing isn't going to work, because we are not born, whether we're humans or men or women, we don't have a turn on, turn off button.
Doesn't work.
Once it's off,
it's off.
It's off. So that's why keeping that flame burning, the passion, the fun, the excitement, the lust, keeping that there is so important, because love alone will just not do it.
But it's even more important because, as we're seeing, the highest rate of divorce right now is in people in their 40s and 50s. What's the major change between people in their 40s and 50s? I don't know. Kids left the house.
Exactly.
And the minute the kids left the house, now you're empty nesters. Or the minute that the kid is old enough to go to school, go off to college, go to high school, and no longer needs you, suddenly you're looking at that partner that you've kind of put on the back burner for all these years and expecting them to be there. That person is gone.
They're long gone. Exactly.
And now we're sitting looking at each other going, okay, so what do we do now? So statistically, all major divorces are happening as soon as the kids no longer need the parents or they have left the house. And they slide. They've been roommates for too long and they don't know how to ignite that fire anymore. It's gone. Like you said in the last episode, nobody puts the wood in the fire. And enough years have gone by, if nobody putting any wood in that fire, there is no fire there anymore.
It's going to take a whole forest to reignite that flame, and that's where it feels like work, to be able to go out and cut down a whole forest and put that much wood into the campfire, I mean.
So here's a good analogy, except you're building a campfire with green wood. Whereas when the early stages of your relationship, when you first met, there was a ton of dry wood that was willing to burn instantly the minute it got any kind of heat to it. Now with all these years separating you and all the rejection and all the water under the bridge, you're literally starting a fire with green wood. Ain't gonna happen. A lot of smoke if you can get it there, but you're not going to get it. So that's one of the reasons that we often talk about, is to keep, and we make a concentrated effort to keep that fire burning. We make a concentrated effort in saying, you know what, let's do things for each other. Let's never let that passion go. Let's hold each other accountable every time somebody starts slipping.
Exactly.
And go, hey, wait a minute, step your game up.
And that's an amazing biohack tool secret that we want to share with you is being able to create in your relationship an accountability system. Being willing to ask your partner, will you hold me accountable when I start slipping, when I make excuses, when I shut off my sexuality, when I stop making you a priority? And most people can't handle it.
Yeah, because let's be honest, accountability requires me to admit that something I'm doing is wrong. And our egos get in the way. Whether you're male or female, our egos. Nobody wants to be held accountable. Everybody wants, it's so much easier to blame the other person
Exactly.
than to be able to go, oh no, wait a minute, how did I contribute into this?
But when you can have a partner who holds you accountable, it's amazing because it doesn't just affect your relationship. Personally, I can say it affects all areas of your life. Because then you can actually tell your partner, okay, when I'm not doing this or not doing that, because I have a saying, how you do sex is how you do life.
Absolutely.
So if you can't talk about sex with your partner, there's probably a million other things that you cannot talk about with your partner.
Well, most people that we know can't talk about sex. They
No.
can't even, there's a version of conversations around sex that they can have with their friends. But the real conversation that they need to have with each other, most people are not comfortable having that conversation. There's too much egos in the way.
Yep. And men and women communicate differently, and oftentimes most people just don't know how to communicate. And I'm going to go back to one of the topics I'm going to keep coming back to, is we learn how to be human beings before the age of 7. So we literally, we look around at our parents, our caretakers, school, teachers, our friends, what's on TV, and we basically program that as these computer files into our subconscious mind, which is our computer bank. And then later in life, we're pulling out these files that were created before the age of 7, and we're just subconsciously allowing those to be activated, and then that's how we communicate. So one of the problems with communication, especially when it comes to holding each other accountable or discussing sex, is that, how do I say it? We don't communicate properly.
So I'm thinking, this is going to get worse. It's getting worse.
It already is.
Because the generation, what are they at now?
Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z,
whatever they are, don't know even basic communication.
Everything
is text and everything is abbreviated, and they can't even have face-to-face conversation with friends or family members. Let alone to be in a relationship. So the communication piece is going to be a major downfall for relationship. How many times, how many people, which is a whole different conversation, do we see they'll sit there and they'll text each other?
Well, we've been on cruises where there is no Wi-Fi, yet at a dinner table, the entire family is on their phone, texting, playing games, doing whatever they're doing without Wi-Fi in the middle of the ocean. And we see it everywhere we go. We're on vacation. We see people on their phones scrolling through Instagram, scrolling through Facebook.
Instead of talking to each other. Or instead of enjoying the beauty of being on vacation where their friends on Instagram and Facebook would probably love to be there where they are, but instead, where they are, they're not appreciating it because they're going through Instagram and Facebook, which applies to relationships. Instead of enjoying your partner right here in front of you, instead, you're on Instagram and Facebook looking to see what else is out there, who you can get attention from, who you can get likes from, because again, all of that looks so much better than your current relationship. Because, we got to look on Instagram and see, or Pinterest and see what that $30,000 wedding is going to look like. So one day I'm going to have it, which brings us to our story. I'm blessed that you're not one of those and that you were happy to skip off barefoot in the jungles
of Costa Rica
and decide to get married.
That was the best way to do it. It cost us a whole $65, which we
had
to literally put into the shaman's hands because he didn't want to take any money at all.
So don't tease them anymore. Tell them the story.
Well, as you know, we were both anti-marriage before meeting each other. Like I told you about my story, one relationship and then I swore off relationships.
2 marriages, I was done.
Yeah, so I was done. I was having a good time, putting my career first, traveling, all of that was so much more important to me because I loved me and I wanted to really devote my life to me, whatever that was, traveling, moving. I lived in Portugal for a while, traveling the world, really just enjoying being with me. And that was one of the secrets to being able to show up for you. Was loving me and enjoying being with me. I was willing to be alone. I was willing to be single until I was 40 if a man never showed up. And I wasn't actively looking for a partner. What's funny is I created this profile on spiritual singles in 2009, 2 years before we met actually. Never did anything with it. left it there and forgot about it. Moved to Portugal, came back from Portugal, and next thing you know, I get an email in my Gmail account from this love guru on spiritual singles. So I decide to open it and see who is he, what does he have to say. And we played, email tag, text tag for a couple months?
Yeah, but it wasn't much. It was like maybe 10 emails, if that.
If that. It wasn't constant communication, because this, again, was almost 10 years ago. So it was email and text. We didn't have smartphones back then. And one day I messaged him and said, okay, I'm in town. Do you want to meet? If not, I might be moving back to Europe here soon. So it's like now or never. And he said yes. So we decided to have a coffee meeting, and that coffee meeting lasted for a whole 2.5 hours. It was an amazing conversation.
Which I tried everything in my power to scare the crap out of her so that she can go running.
Couldn't scare me. He told me to go running, and I looked at him and went, go running where?
And when I showed up, it was from a place of, I'd been married twice before. And I told her from the very beginning, if you're looking for a relationship, I'm not your guy. If you're looking to get married, I'm not your guy. If you're looking to have kids, I'm not your guy. You're still young. You haven't been married before. Please go and figure out life. Because I've done it. I didn't need to do anything more.
But what's interesting is I never used to believe in that saying, when you know, you know. But I just knew in that moment, okay, there's something different about this guy. And what's interesting with my past is I was doing sex, but I wasn't doing relationships. So I was going on dates, I was having flings, and what I noticed in that is I was creating this list in my mind of what I want and what I don't want in a partner. And I actually did have a physical list, and the list was very long. And after about, I would say, 2 weeks of being together, I actually went back to that list, and I noticed he was not only everything on the list, but you actually added stuff to the list.
See, and for me, it was, I played the path of, let me check the spiritual route, except the women that I dated in the spiritual realm shut off their sexuality because somehow or the other they believe that in order for you to be spiritual, you have to be broke and non-sexual. And then I switched over to the sexual route because I'm a highly sexual person, and the women there were all about sex, but were completely disconnected from their spirituality, which kind of left it shallow for me. Mm-hmm. And all I wanted was, can I just get a perfect combination of both? And that's one of the reasons I tried so hard to scare the crap out of you.
Didn't work.
Didn't work. And what you showed up is that, so we went on 4 dates.
Oh, within 1 week.
All within 1 week. Except the 4th date.
I never left.
I made dinner. Somebody was 2 hours late, at least.
About that. I still showed up though.
But you showed up. And it didn't start off sexual as all my other relationships had. That when you asked to spend the night, I literally said, no, if you're willing to, you could sleep in one of the spare bedrooms. And when you said to me, I just want to crawl into bed with you, I go, under one condition.
No sex.
No sex.
And I was totally okay with that because I was exhausted. By the time I arrived there, it was 11:30 at night.
Oh wait, if you weren't exhausted, I'd been in trouble then?
Maybe, you never know. But all of my relationships as well, I mean, they weren't relationships. So they did start off sexual. So because I felt there was something there, I was willing, no sex. We're not going to start that way. We actually made it through a couple dates with no sex. Okay, we're doing good.
But it was the fact that when you showed up, when we spent the night, and I was challenged sleeping with people. After slept with so many people, I didn't want to sleep with anybody. I couldn't sleep with anybody. But it was amazing that we just fell asleep and stayed asleep. And then you never left.
No. Well, we stayed asleep until 5 a.m, more or less.
I don't remember that part.
Then we broke the rules. It was the next day. So we made it through the night.
Next day.
It was
the next day. But, and how long did I take to propose to you after that? After I told you I'd never get married again?
Less than 1 month.
And that's from a relationship coach who'd been coaching people all the time. Give yourself space, give yourself time, make sure they're the one. But in spending time, because remember you took off to Costa Rica about 2 weeks later.
Yeah, so I spent, after that 4th date, and I spent the night, you asked me to come back, and then I came back the next day.
I asked, or you just showed up?
You asked.
You
asked. So we spent a few days together, and then you took off to Toronto for 5 days, and I stayed to pet sit Monkey. And then we were together for maybe a week, and then I left for Costa Rica for a week. And then when I came back, we were already moving into a new house together because you made me decide, do you wait for me or do you move in without me? And then it's never really my house. And I chose for you to wait for me. which I'm glad I did because you hung up all my clothes and shoes and you decorated for me. So
I
it
know
was
what
worth
I'm
it.
doing. But 30 days later, I proposed because I realized after spending 30 days with you that I couldn't imagine life without you. And one of the big things for me was the comfort level. It was like I was living with myself, a female version of me. There was very little friction. There was very little adjustment time. It was like, hey, I want to go do this. You want to go? Oh, yeah, I'm down. You want to do this? Yeah. So it was just so much easier. And that's when I made the decision that, you know what? I can't see myself living without this person. And being able to spend the time with you and get to understand your values and who you are and where we were matching at all different levels, not just in the things that we like together, but even at the sexual level, at a conversational level, at a spiritual level, we were checking off all those things.
Absolutely. And it was really cool how we came together because I had been doing a lot of spiritual work and teaching classes to women for a couple years prior to meeting him. And I was having my own journey with my body, overcoming my body image issues from competing in fitness competitions. You had just competed in fitness competitions. I had invited you on our second date to a wine-changing class where I talked about quantum physics and just how much our thoughts affect our reality and how we can actually change what we put into our body, which is basically where I moved into after competing, doing the diet, doing the training, doing everything A plus B equals C, the very analytical, logical way of doing fitness competitions. And then here I meet you, who you did it.
Exact opposite.
How now I'm teaching it, which was cool because on our second date, I invited him to a wine changing class and he completed the class for me. So it was kind of testing him to see, can you hang with me?
Yeah, about that.
And then I came to realize, wow, he actually is living the tools that I'm teaching. So it was cool to be able to go, I teach this, I live it. Okay, so then I'm putting together that, 12-step program for basically what you are already doing and then taking it to the next level. So then I was able to transform a lot of the work that I teach and transform my classes with women. And then from there, it's just been a journey of learning and experiencing and coaching together and
learning and continuing, like you said, it's a continuous learning.
We're students of life every single day. We're not perfect. We have a fairy tale relationship, but
we're still learning.
We're still learning. We still have challenges, and that's why we want to share with all of you how to overcome those challenges so you can have a fairy tale relationship.
Oh, like we talk about everything in our life is a story, from our wedding rings and how the wedding rings came to be, to how I proposed, to ziplining for 3 hours in the jungles of Costa Rica to get married by a shaman who'd never performed a non-indigenous wedding before. 6-year-old, 100-year-old ceremony, 24 hours after landing in Costa Rica, with no plans.
Totally spontaneous. We arrive and it's like, okay, we were traveling with the rings and we decided, okay, wherever feels good, we're just gonna get married there. So we land in Costa Rica, talk to the bartender and ask him, hey, do you know anybody who can marry us? And he recommended a church. And we're like, no, we don't want to go down that route. Do you know anybody else, like a shaman, something more spiritual? And he recommended Chayu, who
a shaman in a village at the foot of a live volcano.
In La Fortuna, Costa Rica, which is amazingly beautiful, by the way, if you've never been there. And we decided, okay, let's go there tomorrow and let's ask him to marry us. Which, after a couple times of begging and pleading, he said no. And then finally he agreed when we told him who recommended us. And then he basically gave us the option, well, how do you want to get to my village? Do you want to walk? Do you want to come by horseback? Do you want to take a trailer? Or do you want to zip line? And we asked, well, how long is it going to take you to get ready to prepare for our ceremony? And he said 3 hours. And of course, how long does it take to zip line?
3 hours.
3 hours. So needless to say, we spent 3 hours ziplining to our amazingly beautiful shamanic spiritual wedding ceremony in the foothills of Costa Rica.
Right out of National Geographic.
And it was done in 3 different languages, indigenous language translated to Spanish and then translated to English.
Yep.
So everything in our life is a story, and it's amazing when you can come together with a partner and have that adventurous spirit, which is one of the items on my list. I know I asked for somebody who wants to travel, because when we first got together, it was, hey, I lived in Europe and I might be going back to Europe, and we actually did look at moving to Europe. He's like, oh, you want to live in Europe? Let's go. So every little aspect of who we are is just a compliment to one another. And we're going to reiterate this a lot. He doesn't complete me and I do not complete him.
Absolutely not.
We were both 100% complete before meeting one another. It just so happens that because we complement one another so well, we just take each other to the next level. We take our experience to the next level. We take our happiness to the next level. And that's really what we want to be able to help you guys do, is take your relationship to the next level.
But we don't just do it for each other. And that was the one thing, if you remember early in the relationship, I told you, I says, I'm going to challenge you with the fact that our relationship, and at the time I was doing it for my nephews growing up, that I wanted to show them what a great relationship should look like.
Exactly.
But instead we put it out to public, and now thousands of followers later, everybody sees our relationship under a microscope, which is okay with me, because one of my big things when I decided to be a coach 12, 13 years ago was it was a pet peeve that people weren't living their truth. And one of the things that I used to always talk about is, would you take financial advice from a financial advisor who's broke?
No, definitely not. And it's no different. Would you hire a personal trainer to train
Who's
you in the
overweight?
gym who is overweight and doesn't know a thing about competing
Or
or a
nutrition
diet
or
or
anything.
nutrition?
Absolutely. So one of our goals has always been to not just talk about what we've learned, or what we've read, or what we've studied, but actually to be living it every single day in every single way, challenges and all, so that when we can stand up in front of everybody and go, yeah, we do that.
Exactly.
Yes, we have those challenges. Yes, we got over that. And it's not just a Facebook or I'll just call it social media. It's not just a social media image of this wonderful thing that looks like marriage. It's a reality.
The reality, exactly.
It's
and we live what we teach.
Yeah, it's when you take off the camera, it's us cuddling up on the couch watching TV every night, or holding each other's hand and going for a walk on the beach, or taking the dog and strolling down the road, and happily wanting to genuinely spend time with each other. Happily wanting to have conversations at 5 o'clock in the morning, deep conversations, or falling asleep and still be talking to each other, or traveling for 6 or 7 hours and never stopping talking to each other. So that's what makes the difference.
We did a lot in the beginning of the relationship. We traveled, 23 trips in 1 year together?
Yeah. We saw a lot of countries.
We did, and we spent a lot of time talking, a lot of time brainstorming, a lot of time coming up with book ideas. And we're going to share with you those secrets of how to stay, not necessarily sane, but sane in a way, connected.
Absolutely.
Amongst all of life's challenges. Yes, we've gone through financial struggles. Yes, we've gone through complacency, work issues, stress, you name it. We've gone through the struggles of moving to a completely different country.
And not knowing the language or the culture.
Exactly. So we've been through it all, and that's why we're so excited to be able to be here. And
we've done it with no safety net.
No,
and continue to do it with no safety net.
Yeah, you're right.
But we are going to share, again, why do you want to follow our YouTube? What makes us different? Well, we live what we preach every single day, and there is not a single thing that we will not talk about, hence why we call it the naked truth.
And we're willing to be raw and vulnerable, and we're willing to be naked. We're going to put our shit out there for you to see. Well, maybe.
But the reality of it, and again, we know that there's a lot of people who are going to disagree with what we have to say, and there are always the haters who are going to come through the woodworks, and they're full of this and they're full of that. But here's the reality: no matter what, continue to follow us, and I will tell you this, that whatever we talk about, we will hold anybody to the challenge. We live what we talk about every single day, and it works for us, and hopefully it works for you.
Absolutely. So we'll see you in the next episode.
Don't forget to subscribe.